Fellow citizens, the People's Court is now in session. Distinguished citizens, in our conversation this morning, we are dealing with a very familiar issue in our both the family and in our polity, the issue of what is corruption and what effect is corruption having in our lives. Fellow citizens, the court this morning is the issue of bringing the entire citizenry of Nigeria to court on our attitude towards stealing and corruption. Even our public officers have added to the confusion by defining their own interpretation of the weighty issue of corruption. I will begin in the session in the court this morning by taking on what a one-time Minister of Women Affairs and Social Development under the tenure of President Olusegun Obasanjo's administration. Specifically, I'm talking about Iyom Josephine Anini. At interview by Saturday Sun, September 13, 2004, she was reported, and I quote, "This country is a cesspool of corruption. And this is why we have people living below poverty line in a blessed country like ours. Do you know that one of the recommendations of the recently concluded conference is that anybody caught with his or her hands in the public purse should be jailed for life? I wanted us to borrow from China, where corrupt officials are executed, but the majority said corruption or corrupt people should be imprisoned for life and all their assets confiscated." Unquote. Not too long ago, both Mr. President Goodluck Jonathan and the chairman of Independent Corrupt Practices Commission, ICPC, Professor Ekpo Enta, at a different occasion though, both stated that stealing is erroneously reported as corruption. Distinguished fellow citizens, the pertinent question here is, what is corruption? The reason why we want to deal with this issue is that even the government in Nigeria don't know what corruption is. So how much less the citizens? They think that stealing is different from corruption. How is corruption defined in Nigeria law? So, is the president right in terms of law? The answer is no. Under Nigeria's Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Act of 2004, the term corruption does indeed apply to crime such as theft or embezzlement of public funds, but also to bribery, fraud, and other related offenses. And in all these cases, it is corruption only if the person in question has carried out the offense through the office they hold. Section 382 of the Nigerian Criminal Code, by contrast, provides a much simpler description of theft, unrelated to the role a person takes in life. A thief is simply a person who fraudulently takes or fraudulently converts to his own use or to the use by any other person anything capable of being stolen. A U.S.-Africa summit recently opened with warning about the toll corruption takes on development, sparking discussions about the extent of the problem in Africa and how it could be defined. That is an issue which Nigeria president has also been debating of late. On 5th May 2014, Goodluck Jonathan responded to allegations that he is not doing enough to curb corruption among his ministers by claiming that most of what is referred to as corruption is not really that at all. And I quote, over 70% of what are called corruption cases, even by the EFCC, that is the Economic and Financial Crime Commission, and other anti-corruption agencies, is not corruption, but common stealing. The president told national television, saying the corruption claims appeared politically motivated. Barely 2 weeks later, Ekpo Enta, the chairman of the Independent Corrupt Practice Commission, ICPC, one of the Nigerians' anti-corruption agencies, told an audience in Abuja, and I quote, stealing is erroneously reported as corruption, even by the educated Nigerians. Fellow citizens, when the driver blames the passenger, or when the man who loads the vehicle you call them tout blames the owner of the vehicle. So, was the president right to dismiss most corruption claim as being nothing of that sort? Africa Check decided to look at the corruption indices in this country. But distinguished citizens, before we can go on this discussion, I want to remind you lately of the erudite professor, late Professor Chinua Achebe, in his book titled The Trouble with Nigeria, first published in 1983 by Fourth Dimension Publishing Company Limited. Achebe asked the question, where lies the problem in Nigeria? And he proffered an answer, and I quote, the Nigerian problem is the unwillingness or inability of its leaders to rise to the responsibility, to the challenge of personal example, which are the hallmark of true leadership, unquote. He went on in his book, President Shagari said words to the effect that there was corruption in Nigeria, but that it had not yet reached alarming proportion. So, the Nigeria current president, Jonathan, stated that most of the cases we call corruption are common stealing. In the said book by Achebe, the author held, corruption in Nigeria has passed alarming and entered the fatal stage. And Nigeria will die if we keep pretending that she is only slightly indisposed. In the same book, he went on to say, the Weekly Star of 15th May 1983 has this on its front page under the title, Nigerian and Corruption, unquote. And the banner headline of this was this, keeping an average Nigerian from being corrupt is like keeping a goat from eating yam, unquote. This is a bad way of putting it. Worse, perhaps, than the president, that is Shagari, denial of its severity, including this president. A goat needs yam because yam is food for goats. A Nigerian does not need corruption. Neither is corruption necessary nourishment for Nigerians. It is totally false to suggest, as we are apt to do, that Nigerians are different fundamentally from any other people in the world. Nigerians are corrupt because the system under which they live today makes corruption easy and profitable. They will cease to be corrupt when corruption is made difficult and inconvenient. Fellow citizens, this is the discourse in the public today in the People's Court. The issue of what is corruption. Our president gave us an idea that 70% of the cases we allege or libel corrupt practices are indeed common stealing, and they are politically motivated. Big brother,
It's a funny way. It's a funny way
you
to
are in
look
court
at it.
today, so make your contribution
it's
before I call on Chizoba to.
It's a funny way to look at it, and I think one problem that we have, or a problem that they have decided to ignore, is the fact that there's a lot of self-denial. There's a lot of denial, with the people in power, the politicians, the leaders, and I think that they have decided that's the way to go about it, because that's the only way to not fight the problem. That's the only way to not face the real issues that we are going through. If you deny that they exist, if you ignore them, maybe they will just go away somewhere or the other. Or maybe it's not even your problem. It has been there since forever. It wouldn't be me that will fix it. Let me leave it for the next man. And of course the next man comes and says, let me leave it for the next man. And you realize that 8 years has passed, 16 years has passed, and it's shocking that Chinua Achebe wrote this as far back as in 1983.
But Nigerians they don't find the pleasure to seek knowledge, because this corruption issue, the same answer that Shagari was giving is the same answer, worse still, that Jonathan is giving.
That's what I'm saying. So
and our governors are not concerned about corruption. Neither are the local government chairman concerned about corruption. So they say that Nigerians need corruption to survive, because goat needs
yam.
So no, what do you say?
There's no solution to the problem, because they
a goat must eat.
Exactly.
So Nigerians have become goats that they need corruption to survive.
But it also might be the system. It might be. I don't think a Nigerian. I wouldn't say a Nigerian child is born and it already has it in his genes that you will be corrupt. It might just be the system that we are born into. It's the things that are not working make you decide, well, maybe it's better to go this other way to get what I want. You wake up in the morning and you're not sure of breakfast, you're not sure of transportation to work, you're not sure of electricity, you're not sure of security even of lives and property. And so it's better you sort things out for yourself than wait for government. Of course, that's where corruption comes in.
And the funny aspect of it is when your leaders are now telling you that the corruption, they are not really corruption, that they are stealing. I wonder what they expect from the youths, because we are looking up to them as role models, and they are telling us that what they are doing is not corruption, that is really stealing. So they are already telling us, okay, you can grow with us because it's still part of the system.
Just steal. Don't be corrupt, but it's okay to
just
steal.
Yeah.
That was why the Erudite Achebe of the blessed memory referred us to a newspaper headline, the Weekly Star. It's a defunct newspaper now. I don't know whether they are still publishing it. So that it says that keeping an average Nigerian from being corrupt is like keeping a goat from eating yam. What we are in court this morning to clear is the leaders tell us that what we have been yelling that is killing Nigeria is ordinary stealing, that it is not corruption. That is where we say this matter should be brought to the People's Court, so that people will know whether the policeman who stands on the road, he is a man with authority. You are bribing him, but his corruption is embedded in corruption, is bribery. You want to stop him from doing his work. You are influencing him with money.
Yes.
So it's an issue of bribery. So it's not stealing. It won't be captured as stealing, but bribery. But the president told us that 70% of the people we have been accused of corruption are people who did this common stealing. That is why we are in court. On this note, the People's Court will rise.